Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of the HR Social Hour Half Hour Podcast. I'm calling this the Pop Culture Roundtable. We're not going to talk HR at all, hopefully. That's the whole goal of this. For those of you that listen to the show regularly, you know that Wendy and I have the question connection. And part of that question connection, we ask all the guests of the show their favorites, their favorite TV show, their favorite movie, their favorite music. I wanted to expand on that and talk to three former guests, people that I am big fans of, that I've talked about some pop culture stuff with over the year, and wanted to reflect on 2018. So without further ado, I'm going to let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Michael Mullady.
What's up, everybody? This is Chris Orozco coming to you from beautiful Northern California.
And I'm Lorena Pabón. I'm from Orlando.
Welcome to all of you. Again, I was super excited. I put the word out about doing this pop culture thing, and you all were kind enough to say, hey, I'm interested. And again, I enjoy talking about some of these things with you offline. So looking forward to the conversation tonight. We're going to talk. Each one of us will have 3 movies, TV shows, what I'm calling audio items. So it could be a song, an album, or a podcast. We'll each talk about 3 of those things that we really enjoyed this year, and then one event or pop culture item that's come up for the year. Now, I will say that it doesn't have to be in 2018. It could be new to you. So if you just discovered Cheers from 1982 and you want to talk about in 2018, that's the beauty of this, is we'll do that. But we're going to start with movies. And Lorena, we'll let you kick it off. What's the first movie you want to talk about this year?
Well, A Star is Born with Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. And of course, Sam Elliott, who is, he also was a big part of the movie. I really enjoyed the music and the storyline. I know this movie's been done 3 or 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. I did not know this, this was like a remake from the beginning. So then I figured that out, and I was, very surprised, because, sometimes remakes, you can just tell they're not very good. But this movie was really good.
Have you guys seen it?
I haven't. I've heard it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I've heard wonderful things, but I have not had a chance to see it.
Yeah, I've heard it's great.
The music is excellent. I cannot believe, Bradley Cooper, for someone who has never sung before in his life, I don't know how he trained, but he sings excellently. The soundtrack is amazing. And yeah, it is heartbreaking, but it is such a good movie. It's worth the watch.
Wow. I'll have to check it out.
Very
Definitely,
cool.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, my first movie that I want to talk about is a sequel, and it's Pacific Rim Uprising.
Ooh, yes.
The biggest, dumbest, most fun movie I saw this spring. I'm one of these folks that I believe the movies as a kid you imprint upon you, and I'm convinced that Pacific Rim, if I had seen it when I was 12, it'd be my favorite movie of all time. So when Pacific Rim Uprising came out, I was there opening day with my 15-year-old, and we laughed and we cheered and we just had fun. And when it was over, my son looked at me and goes, "Dad, that was really fun." And it really was.
That's
It
awesome.
is not going to win any awards. It is really like, I'm going to compare it to a CW show. It's like Dawson's Creek with robots, or I don't know what now, Riverdale maybe, because really it has nothing to do. It's imagine a teen drama, because they're obviously rebuilding the soldiers or the pilots for the mech army. But man, if you like big robots with rocket maces and machine guns and swords that merge together like a Megazord and Voltron, you got to see Pacific Rim Uprising. Check your brain at the door, but super fun. Michael, what about you?
Who doesn't like that stuff? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'll go for the. I must admit, I haven't seen a ton of movies this year, just with the little one in the house. But I will say the Avengers, of Infinity was pretty amazing. Especially the way that it left it. Of course, the trailer for the next part just came out, and of course, I was absorbing that in the last couple of days. But yeah, no, I thought they did a great job just kind of pulling everyone together, and how they fledged out the story, and of course, how everything ended and kind of left everyone,
Yes.
wondering how they're gonna figure this one out, which was pretty awesome. So I'm totally excited about that and see how they end it or take it next year. So
I've never seen an audience so angry
Oh my gosh!
at the
Yeah.
end of the movie. And what was great. Now, I have to say personally, I'm a big fan of the weapon Stormbreaker because it belongs to a character that if they introduce in the Marvel universe, I will freely admit that I will cry like a little baby if that character shows up on the screen. When they announced Stormbreaker was going to, when they're at the forge and they're like, we're going to build this weapon and they say Stormbreaker, I actually made a noise that the entire audience heard because my younger son was in the audience on the other side of the theater and he said, Dad, I know that was you. And I'm like, don't care.
No shame.
Yep.
No. But my favorite part was at the end and it said Thanos will return.
Uh-huh.
One of my kids saw a guy flip off the screen.
It was really bleak, the ending. I remember that was one of the movies that I had listed too, and I had read a review prior to that. I try to avoid spoilers, so it's a spoiler-free review, but the reviewer said that the ending was just devastating. And I thought, well, what could they do that's so sad? And I was watching it in the theater. I said, well, there it is. I mean, half of the people are dying. The Spider-Man death, or I don't know if they're deaths or whatever, but when he disintegrated, this is devastating.
That was rough. Yeah.
This is
that
terrible.
was the worst one for mine.
Yeah.
And then even the music, if you guys notice when the credits start rolling and it just shows Thanos and he just kind of looks at the sunset and there's like a slight little grin to him and then it just cuts to black and it's just a black screen, really sad music. It's not like that uplifting Avengers music.
You think
like
they're going to come back or
ones.
something. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so part of the fun in that, it's like, so they're filming the next Spider-Man movie already. They already have these plans. So they're going to come back. But I think part of the fun is like, well, how are they going to do this? And I have no idea. So I think that's part of the fun for the next one is finding that out.
As I always tell people on the other podcasts that I do, it's comics. People have to remember that. Nothing is ever done. Characters die, they come back. And yes, if you thought they were going to let Black Panther and Spider-Man and some of these major characters that they are looking at for the long run to continue this franchise just suddenly be gone, you're crazy. So it's kind of a hollow sadness. But yeah, no, I'm with you. It was on my list and just a great film. Hopefully that people listening to this have seen it. And if you're hearing spoilers, we apologize. But
oh my God, I didn't even think about
at this point, come on. Sorry. Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, everybody. Should we have went into spoiler mode or something?
I know, right? No warning.
I'll put a warning out on the front end of this for sure.
Spoiler
Chris,
mode.
how about one of your movies?
So Avengers was one. Won't You Be My Neighbor? I don't know if you guys heard that. That was the documentary. Oh my gosh.
Yes, that was great. I forgot I saw that this year.
Yeah. And I didn't get a chance to catch it in the theater, but I ended up was grateful to be able to buy it and see it at home. And I'm 100% honest, you guys, just tears. I mean, I grew up watching that, man. And yeah.
I saw the trailer. I remember seeing the trailer for it, and I was in tears at the trailer. So like I haven't seen it yet. So like I'm like, oh man, okay.
And I don't know if it hits me. Yeah. Just check it. Everybody, check it out. If it's just a feel good story, and I think we need a lot of that in this world right now. So just watching it, and I think maybe as a parent too, it kind of hit me a little bit more. With a 5-year-old now, and he watches Daniel Tiger, so it's kind of a cool like generational thing that he's kind of getting that same thing. But watching the story about Mr. Rogers, that he chose this segment of society, which I would say, could be the most important, as our children, and said, I'm going to do something for them to help them navigate life. And he just happened to choose television as the medium at that time. So nowadays we have a lot of, whether it's podcasts, shows, blogs, we're all content creators that are talking right now, just whatever we put out there in the world. And he just put out so much good. It was, everybody just check it out.
It's great. Lorena, what about your next film?
Well, I have a theme. I have a running theme here because I like films that have music with it. And so this year, Mamma Mia 2 came out, and it was 10 years after the first one. And I'm a huge fan of musicals, so I was really excited to see Meryl Streep and Amanda Seyfried just relive the story, and you see the prequel, what happens before in Meryl Streep's character's life, and then you also see a sequel of what's happening in Amanda Seyfried's life after she fell in love and whatnot, and found out about her 3 dads in the first film.
Does Pierce Brosnan sing again?
Which one? I'm really bad with actors, though. Which one is him?
He was James Bond.
Yeah, he was the.
Oh yeah,
He's British.
He was the one who ended up being the dad, I think.
He's the one that can't sing.
Yeah, exactly,
right? Yeah, I was just saying. Yeah, of all of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, he sang, but it was like not that important. I guess like his character had not as much importance as like the first movie, but yeah, he did have a few lines there.
Yeah.
So fair warning on that.
It's still a good movie. It's like very feel good, and the music's good, and and it's a story, especially like as a woman, like the mom and daughter story. It is just an excellent thing to see. I mean, it makes you feel like get all the feels and whatnot, and it makes you miss your mom. Even though I live with my mom, but I still missed her at that moment. So it's just a good movie.
Excellent. Well, Infinity War was already mentioned, so I will talk about the other superhero movie that I had on my list, and that was Deadpool 2.
Ooh.
Now, Deadpool is not for everybody, and it shouldn't be, and I think that's a good thing. I think that's one of the really great things that Marvel, and even expanded Marvel with Fox and the people that have the rights to some of the characters, they are doing these other movies that are not necessarily family friendly. Mm-hmm. I do think it's going to be very interesting to see this PG-13 version of Deadpool 2 that's coming out. I hopefully can see it in the theater. But Deadpool 2 I saw this summer in the theater with like 5 people. And it is different than the first one. I really like the first one. I like this one too. It's just very different. But it has what I consider the greatest end sequence to any comic book film I've seen ever, period. Hands down, Ryan Reynolds, just winner take all, he did it, and congratulations to him. I hope they don't do another one, because I think you can burn it out. I have a feeling they will,
of course.
But Deadpool 2, like I said, not for everybody. It is raunchy, but it's funny in a lot of places. It's got a lot of great one-liners where they not only knock Marvel, but they knock DC. They knock everybody. So if you want to see everybody get skewered in a comic book movie, then it might be the one for you. But like I said, it was my other comic book movie on the list, and it was super fun. And again, this PG-13 one that's coming out apparently is shot to be like The Princess Bride. So I am super curious to see what that's going to be.
Okay.
That sounds random.
That sounds interesting. Okay.
They filmed scenes with Fred Savage where he is in the bed as the kid again.
Oh, you see?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that should be interesting. Okay.
So, yeah, Once Upon a Deadpool is what they're calling it. Wow. So it comes out. It's coming out right around Christmas, and it's only going to be out, I guess, for a few weeks. And the other cool thing, and Ryan Reynolds gets a lot of grief sometimes, but I believe it's $1 from every ticket for this for the screenings of this movie are going to go to F Cancer, which is a charity that he's been very involved in.
Okay.
And so anyway, well, enough Deadpool 2 talk, because I might be the only one that had that. Michael, how about your next one?
No, I admit I didn't see it this year, but it just seems like Ryan has just a ton of fun with that character. So I'm sure, I think it's almost more fun than work for him on that one. So yeah. So for me, this one's not new, but it was new to me. I'm probably about a good year off for some of these movies, but I just saw Logan probably a few months ago, honestly, and that was just
nice.
A bit of a roller coaster for me. I just, having loved Patrick Stewart as Professor X, through most of those earlier movies, and then seeing this one was just kind of a bit of a heartbreaker in general. But then just kind of in general, just kind of the older X-Men. I admit I didn't know that. I'm sure that obviously there's probably a thread that feeds the older, as they get older and et cetera. But it was really good. It was really gritty. Obviously more R-rated than any of the other movies that they've done, but didn't take away from it. I think it actually kind of fit the theme that they were going for, and it was I enjoyed it. It was really good.
I think he's the one character you could get away, other than Deadpool. I think Wolverine is you could do a really adult Batman too, but that Logan had to be that.
Yeah.
I think it had to be that way. It was great. It was definitely tough, but it was what I would consider, especially, and I'll nerd out for a minute on the 80s comics, some of the 80s Wolverine miniseries and stuff that was out then, and read it at the time. That fit that bill absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Awesome.
You know, for me, I think that Hugh Jackman as Wolverine is probably the most perfect comic book casting that I've seen. It's just the guy just did great, and for almost 20 years did he play that character? I think at least 17 years or something like that.
Almost 20.
It's amazing. 20. Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
he did a great job. He did. If he's listening, thank you, Hugh.
Well, and it's going to be hard, like, to picture someone following him on that. Although I'm sure he listens to all these podcasts regularly.
We will tweet him
when we post this.
Exactly.
We'll do a shout out. Hugh,
shout
call
out,
us.
Totally. Hugh, yeah, we're all about it. No, but seriously, like,
join us on the next episode.
But just imagining someone trying to follow him in that role is going to be hard. Period. You know.
That's
Besides, obviously, I know they
yeah.
did the younger ones, but still, like, it is just hard. Yeah,
sure.
So.
That's going to be interesting to see who they get.
Chris, how about your next movie?
I'm going to throw a shout out, my friend, to Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis. Yes. So just came out for the Halloween season. Folks that follow me on the social media, on the Twitterverse, you know, and the Instagram, I'm a huge fan of Halloween, just the Halloween season. I actually got to be a fan of those slasher movies back when I was in high school in the 90s, because that's when, like, those slasher movies, kind of the resurgence, like the Scream movies were coming out and kind of hit a lot of popularity. I Know What You Did Last Summer, so those movies were coming out. So in high school, I kind of found that I was enjoying those. And they came out with one around that time. It was Halloween H2O. I don't know if you guys remember that one. Jamie Lee Curtis had come back.
I do, yeah. Mm-hmm.
For that, and I thought it was. I don't know how it's aged. I haven't really watched it, you know, recently, and I don't know if it's still as good as. But I thought back then when I saw it, it was pretty good. But I thought they did have you guys seen it?
No, I haven't seen this most recent one. No.
Yeah.
No.
I am not a horror movie guy at
me
all.
neither.
Yeah.
See, I do like
the
horror movies, but I haven't seen this one.
I'm with Lorena. I'm going to see Mamma Mia.
I'm gonna stick with Meryl Streep. I'm not doing the Halloween. You know, I can't deal with like the really spooky, like supernatural scary movies. I think the closest I want to get to that is Ghostbusters. That's about as supernatural as I want to get. But like the slasher kind of stuff, I mean, they're okay. But this was really well done. If you do like those kind of movies, Jamie Lee Curtis was great. A lot of folks did really good performances in there. Scary as hell, right? I mean, I jumped out of my seat. I don't know how many times, closed my eyes, and my heart was. I'll go to watch these movies, and then I'll be sitting there thinking, "Why did I come to this?" Because I'm not having fun. I'm kind of suffering right now. I mean, my eyes are closed, my heart is racing. But then after, I'm like, well, I had a good time. You know, that was great. So I'll throw a shout out for Halloween and to Jamie Lee Curtis if she's listening too.
All right, Lorena, what's your last movie?
So, with the superhero theme, Wonder Woman, that came out last year, but I finally saw it this year.
Nice.
Yes.
Excellent.
I'm not a big superhero fan. My boyfriend's the one who enjoys all the DC and Marvel movies. I just go because he wants to see them. But with Wonder Woman, I was the one who was very into the movie, and he liked it and everything, but I was like, wow, this is amazing. I was just so excited to see like a woman, save the day for once. So, so I just really loved it. And Gal Gadot, she is an amazing actress. I had only seen her in like other movies in the past, but I can't even like name one right now. I mean, her face was, familiar and whatnot, but here she totally killed it. She nailed the character perfectly. So
she was great in the Fast and the Furious movies. She was in, she did a really good job in those.
Yeah, she was in there. Now that I think about it, she was.
I totally didn't realize that she was in those. Yeah, okay.
She was, she was great. Yeah. Giselle, I think, was her character.
Okay, yeah, no, she was great in one. I agree.
Wonder Woman for me is the best DC movie so far.
Wow,
right?
the bar is
that's where that's my.
The bar is not very high.
It's different. It is certainly a bar, but no, I really enjoyed it when it came out, and I'm curious to see the next one is actually based in 1984. So that'll be kind of interesting to see. So you jump from World War One, right? Because when it 1910 or 15, it's going to jump to 1984, which will be fun. But that didn't come out till 2020, so we don't. Or at least it's filming now.
That's right. We have
and Kristen Wiig is the villain, I think.
She is. Yep. She's playing Cheetah. I think
interesting.
Cheetah. So yeah.
Cheetah. Yeah. I love her. She's amazing.
I think they just wanted to dress up in 80s fashion for a movie. So.
Well, as somebody that grew up in that time of fashion, I have no problem with it.
No, me neither. I did as well, so it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've talked about all my movies because I had Deadpool 2, Infinity War, and Pacific Rim. So for those of you that weren't really following me in the past, I like big dumb fun. That's my thing. So, Michael, how about your last movie?
So I'm gonna kind of stick with, I guess, Chris's theme for horror, although mine is kind of supernatural. I actually saw it not long ago. I'm again a little behind, but
man, that's great.
No, thank you.
Nope.
I love the book. I admit, and I actually reread the book before earlier in the year, knowing that it had come out again. So I read it like forever ago. So I reread it and got creeped out all over again, and then watched the movie, and they did a good job. It was really well done. It was they scared. I mean, obviously, I don't know. It's a tome to begin with, so you can't, fit everything in there, which is just fine. But they hit the creepy clown, perfectly as always, and you can't go wrong with that. And Pennywise, and the kids did a good job. They had one of the kids from Stranger Things was in it, so it was just it was real good. So they did a good job. And they're gonna do the second half of it, I think next year, maybe the year after, but as adults. So it should be interesting to see how they come full circle on it. So.
I have to say I saw more Pennywise cosplay at comic book conventions this year.
Oh God!
And they all just creep me out. They just creep me.
Oh yeah,
they creep me out. It's not my thing.
No,
but I will say I did watch that. What was I guess in like 1990 or whenever it was out.
Yes,
with Tim Curry.
For
a TV movie, and I think I was in high school. That thing scared me. Just until the end, and the ending was so stupid.
Oh no!
I spent 4 hours of my life to get to a big dumb spider.
A spider, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I thought the new It was great. I thought the new guy did a great job. I don't know if it's just nostalgia, but I thought the Tim Curry Pennywise still is just spooky as hell.
Mm-hmm. That it's hard to yeah.
It's but I thought it was really, really, that's one of those movies just from the minute like the Warner Brothers logo hit. Cause I was on the fence about that one. Cause again, I don't like the kind of supernatural stuff, but a bunch of my buddies were going like the early Thursday preview. And I was like, all right, I don't want to be a party pooper. I'll go. And I have an affinity for the original. So I was like, I'll go see this one. And the minute the Warner Brothers logo hit, and it was like there's like a creepy kid like singing some really creepy song, and you see a red balloon float up, and I just thought, what am I doing here? But it turned out to be really good, and I don't know, Michael. I mean, if what your thoughts are, I don't know if it was as scary as I thought it was. It was just a really good story. I thought it was almost like a drama that happened to have a creepy clown in it rather than a monster movie. Like the clown was almost like secondary to it.
I agree, and I think that actually, in some ways, it was a little bit more true to the book because it really is more of a character story that had this incredibly creepy undertone of like this town that everything goes wrong, and there's this evil spirit and blah blah blah. But like, it still ended, but and it had some good jumps and and scares to it.
Oh, no doubt,
but definitely they did a good job fleshing out the kids' characters on there, which was good. So
absolutely good choice, man.
All right, Chris, your last movie.
So I did the Avengers, Won't You Be My Neighbor, and then Halloween, but I'll throw a shout out for Black Panther. That was just fantastic. Probably top 3 Marvel movies for me. That one, I don't know if you guys saw that one, but that was just so good. Another one I missed in the theater, saw it at home, and just thought, after it was over, I just thought, wow, that just kicked so much ass. That was great.
I caught it on Netflix. It was
Did you like it?
Good. I did. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think with the superhero movies, it's especially with characters when they're introducing them, like Doctor Strange, Black Panther, so often it feels by the numbers, right? Like, Marvel's got a formula, but I thought Black Panther did not, it was not a formula like some of the other ones. Like, I felt like Doctor Strange was too much like Iron Man. just
I didn't really like
drunk
Dr.
guy, that
Strange,
kind of thing. But anyhow, no, I mean, it was really well done. The music was really cool.
Yeah,
it was.
I think, it made a lot of money, so we'll get another one.
No, I mean, it was another one.
He's coming back somehow.
Yeah. I just also like the visuals of like where they were and things like that, and I thought it was different. It wasn't all just city, like, and I don't know, New York getting blown up again or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, it was. I mean, they had that parts to it, but it wasn't all that. I thought that was really good. So,
yeah.
It was a beautiful movie. I thought it maybe helped having him introduced in Civil War, so some folks were familiar with him already. They didn't have to go like a full origin story. So I thought that was pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Great. Well, that was great. I think I picked up some recommendations, and hopefully the listeners do too. So we're going to jump over now to television, and Michael, you're up first.
All right. So I'm gonna say, all of mine are not network versions; they're all streaming of some sort, which is good. But the Jack Ryan, the Amazon series that came out, I think it was August or so. That they had been teeing that up all year, really, but it came out, and I wasn't sure if I was gonna like Jim from The Office as Jack Ryan. I wasn't sure if I was gonna buy him. But he did a phenomenal job, even though he did still have that weird look that he gives the camera sometimes. Even though he didn't give the camera, but he nailed it. The show itself, I thought it was a lot of these action kind of stop the, terrorist kind of themes is a little formula, has a formula to it. But at the same time, the story was great. It actually kept me on the edge of my seat on, show to show, and it was good. So I definitely would recommend that if you guys hadn't seen it.
Cool. Chris.
So I don't watch too much television traditionally, but I do play a lot of video games on the television. So I'm going to talk more about the video games rather than traditional television programming. First one that gets a shout out is Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. Are any of you gamers? Anybody? I know John didn't get a chance to play it, but anybody else get to play games or anything like that?
No.
Am I the only one? No problem.
Yeah. It's all good though.
Someone in the audience is going, Chris. I know, Chris. They're so excited you're doing this.
They're yelling
Chris.
in their car right now, saying,
I'm living vicariously through you, my friend.
Yes, sir. I tell you what, guys, this game on PlayStation 4, Spider-Man, I couldn't wait to get it. Got it. It's one of those games, especially nowadays where I don't have as much time as I would have liked to play games as much. A game has to be really good to hook me. And this one was just where I'm, if I put my son to bed and then I'm up until like 2:30 in the morning playing this, and it's just, and then wake up for work at 5 o'clock the next day, maybe sneak out of the office again early because I just can't wait to get home and play this. It's just one of the best Spider-Man stories I have ever experienced, whether in print or on the big screen. At the very least, if you guys aren't gamers, you can go on to YouTube and you can see all the cutscenes. And basically, there's some folks out there that cut all the cutscenes together, and you can basically watch it as a movie and see all the major plot points. But I had tears in my eyes by the end of this, and that hadn't happened to me since the end of Spider-Man 2 back in 2004. And it was just the voice acting was great. The portrayals of the characters were on point, the villains, everything. So check it out. If anything, go on YouTube, watch the cutscenes on there. If you're not a gamer, if you are a gamer, haven't played it, check it out for sure.
Lorena, how about your first show?
So, I'm actually a little bit obsessed with doctor shows. So, one of the ones I discovered was The Good Doctor, which is about like a young surgeon who's also autistic, and it's with Freddie Highmore, and I just like the acting in there. There's like two sides of the story where you're rooting for him because, he's autistic and he has these strengths that, not everyone has. But on the other side, you're also a little bit cringing sometimes when he makes irrational decisions or what seems irrational to us. So it's, it's very, very doctory drama, it's very stereotypical, but still I like the whole putting something different, which is like, a surgeon with autism. So.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of those episodes. Cool. It's kind of his, he nails it because he's off-putting enough, but it's at the same time, like it is a good show. So yeah, no, it's cool.
Well, my first show, I'm already talking about movies. My first show is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which the first season came out last year, but the new season came out just a few days ago. We're here in early December. this show is phenomenal, and it won all kinds of awards. It's about a woman in the 50s who is getting divorced and wants to become a stand-up comedian, and all the kind of misadventures that she has, struggling to balance having children and going through the divorce. Her parents and his parents are still trying to keep them together. It's beautifully shot. It's funny. It's from the folks that did Gilmore Girls. If you haven't watched this and you like, it's comedy, but it's not slapstick, dumb comedy, but really smart humor, great sets and colors and scenery. Mrs. Maisel, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's on Amazon, and I highly recommend it.
See, you mentioned Gilmore Girls, and I'm sold. Like, I'll definitely check it out.
Sign me up.
There you go.
Michael, how about your next show?
All right. I'm gonna kind of stick with the creepy genre, and the Haunting of Hill House, which came out was right around in time for Halloween. It was a Netflix show. It was just phenomenal. I don't know. I don't know if you saw a lot of people talking about it on Twitter and other sort of various mediums, but it was, again, not super horror. It was more creepy / intense. Good character drama. This family and how they started as kids in this house, and then suddenly most of it's flashbacks about now that they're adults and how they're dealing with these different kind of, I guess, PTSD for being in this house as children for a period of time, and the family portions of it. Plus, there is a supernatural edge to it. It was phenomenal. It was one of those things where I would be up till like way early in the morning watching it, and then of course regretting it, not only because I had no sleep, but also because I was watching this late at night, and I could hear every noise in the house after that. But
did you pass out at any point? Because wasn't that the thing? Is it was freaking everybody out?
Yeah,
they said it was like the scariest thing ever.
It was, and I did hear that, and I couldn't even pinpoint a point other than one jump that got me. That I can't imagine people were truly like passing out because of it. But hey, I don't know. Some people, I guess, maybe didn't know what they were getting into. I don't know, but yeah, no, it was really good, and I would definitely recommend.
Very cool, Chris. I know it's not a show. How about the next game?
It is not a show, sir. It is another game. We have God of War on PlayStation 4. It's a pretty brutal game. It's pretty gory. It's not for younger ages. There is the latest chapter in a series that I think it started on PlayStation 2, and then they had through God of War 3 that was on PlayStation 3. Now they just did this one. Again, it's a great action game, but it is pretty brutal, so it's not for younger audiences. But at the core of the story, if you guys just want to Google it, you see like the cover art of the game is a father and a son. And so really the story, the heart of it, I was really surprised because the other chapters back, on PlayStation 2 and 3, they were really just kind of just straight up action games. And there was a great story about Greek gods and all this stuff, but the story was not really well fleshed out. I thought it was just a kind of a action game, almost kind of like John was talking about Pacific Rim Uprising. Kind of, you're just going in to have fun. You're not really going into be blown away by the story or anything like that. This one has a really, really great story, a lot of great direction, the writing in it, and the story between the father and the son and the bond they kind of have by the end. Because at the beginning, there's a lot of friction between them. The mother has just passed away. The first part of the game is, if I'm not mistaken, is that they have to bury the mother, or they're taking her to where her final resting place is going to be. If I remember, it's been a little bit since I played it, but so it's a really emotional game. So if there's any gamers out there, if you haven't played it, check it out for sure. God of War, PlayStation 4. It just won. One more thing, they had the Game of the Year awards, and I think it won Game of the Year, if I'm not mistaken.
Very cool.
You're trying to get this show sponsored by Sony PlayStation, right? I see how you
Sony,
work, Chris.
Call us right now, Sony.
We're tagging
Hugh Jackman,
you too,
put in a
Sony.
good word for us or something.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman, call me, man. I'll put my email out there. Email me.
All right, Lorena, how about your next show?
Or
is it a game?
No, it's not a game. Definitely not a gamer. So
Is it a game?
No, I stopped playing video games after Nintendo GameCube, so that'll tell you a lot about me.
Well, that was a great system, though.
It was. I agree. But my next show is American Crime Story. So this season, like they do every season, they do a different like crime, I guess. So last season was the O.J. Simpson trials. This time was the assassination of Gianni Versace. And I was really excited about this season specifically because Ricky Martin was, part of it. And
oh boy,
so I was fangirling, of course. But other than that, there was also Penelope Cruz and Darren Criss from Glee. So it was like a really interesting cast.
Okay. Huh.
And I did not know anything about his assassination. I mean, I knew he was assassinated, but I did not know the ins and outs of it because I was a child when this happened. So I was really excited to see this movie just because of the Ricky Martin factor. So that'll tell you a lot about me.
Interesting. I they did such a good job on the OJ one. I didn't, but I missed this one. I'll have to see if I can catch it. That's interesting.
I liked it. I mean, honestly, I liked this one more. I think it was a little bit more like, creepy, I guess. It was like a creepier story, so I liked it more. I was more interested in it. So
cool.
Well, I'm going to totally change gears with my next show. It's a Netflix original called Somebody Feed Phil. And Phil Rosenthal was the creator and writer on Everybody Loves Raymond. He did a movie called Exporting Raymond. It was when he went to Russia to help them write the Russian version of Everybody Loves Raymond. So I've been watching this guy for a long time. He's super funny. And now I also acknowledge he is 100 millionaire. Big. He's got a lot of money. He's made a lot of money. Right. But this show is all about him traveling the world and eating and tying culture and food. And so it's not like, it's not like
for this.
No. Yeah. So it's not like Anthony Bourdain or Andrew Zimmern and those guys that are chefs, cooks, people. This guy is just like, no, I like to eat. And he's got no cooking background, but it is one of the most beautifully shot shows you're ever going to see for a travel show. It's shot in the highest definition, 4K, LMNOP, whatever kind of cameras they have. It's beautifully shot. And there are some just very, very beautiful moments of humanity. And I think with the world that we're in now and all the bad stuff going on, which obviously this show's about the really good stuff for us, there are some scenes where he's just with people and the human, the fact that it doesn't matter where you're from, that, what he tries to do with the show is you can bond over things like food and you can learn somebody's, culture and their family and engage with this. You don't have to speak the language, but if sharing a table and sharing a meal, there's a lot of power in that. And so this show really hits me in all the right spots. This is the second season, just came out on Netflix. But again, it's called Somebody Feed Phil. And again, there are a lot of eating shows, travel shows out there. This one has a very different bent only because the guy that does it is just, even though he's not a normal guy from the fact he's got a lot of money, it's just some dude who likes to travel and likes to eat. And he tells dad jokes, which as a dad, I appreciate too. So.
There we go.
I appreciate dad jokes.
That sounds good. That actually sounds like a really good show.
Yeah. Michael, your last show.
All right. For me, it was, I enjoyed Lost in Space. It was, Netflix did that, earlier this year. I know it seems like it was probably more than a year ago, but it wasn't. And I liked it. I thought it was fun. I thought it was, obviously I liked they had a little bit more true family dynamic that wasn't necessarily in, obviously the show, the really old show. And then the I guess, whenever the movie came out with Joey from Friends. I also like the fact that, if you haven't seen it, they made kind of Dr. Smith a female, and that was a cool twist. It was just, and it definitely was more than just this, 5 people on a planet. They actually, had a lot more interaction going on with people. And obviously they left it in a bit of a cliffhanger. I'm not sure if they're actually going to make another one. I think I don't know how well it was received overall, but I really enjoyed it. I would recommend it if it's something you guys haven't seen. So
nice.
I will be the one to admit I saw the 1998 movie on the first night.
I saw in the theater too. I remember seeing. Yeah,
and I own the soundtrack.
All right. No,
cool. It's got an orchestral soundtrack and like a dance like EDM, like Fatboy Slim and some of these bands from the late 90s are on it.
It was very 90s.
Bananas.
Yes, it was.
It does not hold up at all.
No.
It does not hold up. All right, Chris. Well, your PlayStation sponsorship continue. I guess your last chance to get your PlayStation scholarship.
Let us continue with the PlayStation, the shilling for PlayStation. I actually, then the next game I'm going to talk about, I'm going to save until we get to the top event item category of the pod, because there is another game that came out this year, but I want to save that one. John might know what this one is because we're friends on Facebook, and he's probably seen me talk about it a lot, and from the interview we had on HR Social Hour. But I'm going to talk about that one a little bit. This is a TV show, though. It's not a new one, but it's still ongoing, and it's pretty much the only show on network TV that has kept my attention throughout these years, and it's Modern Family. I don't know if you guys have watched Modern Family at all over on ABC.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes.
It is still going strong, and there's been a lot of shows like I mentioned back on the Social Hour when I was on there that Married with Children is, along with Chuck, are my favorite shows of all time. But even for those shows, I felt like after a while, it was like, all right, it's probably time for you guys to go because it's just not as good as it used to. This one, I don't know what they're on season 8 or 9 or whatever it is, but I still get a kick out of it. I make a point every week. I DVR it when I get a chance to watch it. I still get a kick out of it. So I definitely want to throw a shout out for that. I think the quality is still great, and I think it's a testament to the actors and the characters and the writing and everything. So it's they're still doing good stuff over there. So if you haven't seen Modern Family, go check it out or reconnect with it.
Yeah, actually, Gloria is like my favorite character ever. So
she's fantastic. It's just a fun show, I love there's the story of the family, and there's always kind of some sort of I don't know, like a moral of the story at the end. The trials and challenges of a modern family. I think there's a lot of good to come from it, and it's just still funny as hell. I mean, they do a good job with it, so they're still doing a good job.
Okay, Lorena, your last show.
So actually Mom came out in 2013, but I discovered it recently. It's with Anna Faris, and I forget who plays her mom's character, but anyways, it's like a half-hour comedy show. So it's sort of like sitcom, and it's basically they are both recovering alcoholics, and Anna Faris's character kind of she has this resentment to her mother because her childhood was not the best, and it's just funny how they interact. And then Anna Faris has children of her own and how they interact with their grandmother. It's just a funny show, and all in all.
Excellent. Well, my last show, I'm a little surprised, Lorraine. I thought you might mention it too. But my last show is The Good Place.
I was leaving it to you. I was leaving that show to you because I knew you were going to mention it.
So The Good Place has had quite a bit of conversation amongst some HR folks on Facebook and on Twitter this year. Phenomenally written show. It's from the creator of Parks and Recreation, which is one of my favorites of all time. And it's all about these people that have passed away, and they go to the afterlife, and it's basically the construct is they think they're the good people, and are they really in the bad place? It is just an amazingly written show, a lot of philosophical it's not religious, but it's very philosophical. It's about right and wrong, good and evil. Some crazy visual stuff, like because they basically, in the afterlife, it's whatever you were here, that's what you have there. And so everybody's house is unique. And, some of the kooky things they do, like the town will have like all ice cream stores, and then it's like all pizza shops and all these different things. But it's just a brilliantly written show. It's in its 3rd season right now. The first 2 seasons are on Netflix. That's where I found it. And I guess kind of what sealed it for me is Ted Danson is on it and doing some of the best acting he's done in years. And there is a scene in one episode where he's tending bar. And it hit me hard because I'm a huge Cheers fan.
Oh man, yeah, that's awesome.
I'm a huge Cheers fan. And when he had a towel on his shoulder, and it was just like seeing Sam Malone.
Oh wow!
But 30 years later, if you haven't seen The Good Place, it's great. It has an affiliated podcast that I'm not going to talk in my music section because I cut the cord years ago. So we watch it when it's in streaming somewhere. Right. Mm-hmm. So I have stopped listening to the podcast because it's in real time and they will interview actors, producers, writers from the show. Basically right after the episode comes out, a podcast comes out. So if you watch the show and haven't listened to the podcast, do, because it'll give you a even better perspective on the show. But if you haven't, and if you like smart written things that are a little off kilter, because it's a interesting perspective. When I've watched the first show, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get into this. And I just had so much fun right from the beginning. Highly recommend The Good Place.
Awesome. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
It's really good.
We said audio for the next thing because for me, I'm definitely podcast driven these days, but there's music, there are albums, there's different things out. So first up on music, we've got our audio, Mr. Orozco. What about you?
Yes, sir. So there's a company. It's called Kind of Funny. They are a group of guys. They used to work for, I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It's a website called IGN. It's a huge, I don't know if it's the largest video game news website. It might be, but it's pretty big. And a couple years ago, they broke off. I remember one morning it just said, hey, we quit our jobs at IGN and we're starting our own thing. And I just thought, wow, that's really scary and courageous and all these things. And they've built it up where they have different podcasts and they're doing really, really well. And so I love their story that they first had the courage to leave these good gigs that they had and believed in, hey, we could do this on our own and kind of do some different stuff. So I want to throw a shout out for them. Kind of Funny. They have different shows. They have the morning show. I'll sometimes play it on YouTube in my office in the morning and just kind of listen to it. And it's kind of like this where they just talk about the pop culture news of the day and stuff like that. And then they have the Games Cast where they talk about video game news and stuff like that. So I'm really proud of their story. They took a leap of faith and they made it happen. So shout out to those guys at Kind of Funny. Check them out.
Cool. Lorena.
So this is the only time I'm going to mention an album in audio. So A Star is Born soundtrack. So going back to my favorite movie this year.
There you go.
The album is amazing. I'm not a huge Lady Gaga fan at all. Actually, I mean, her music is not my style, but it's very refreshing to see her and hear her, sing a different type of music. More, it's like it's pop, but there's also like a rock type of thing going on. So it's like pop rock in a sense. And then again, Bradley Cooper's voice, I think his inspiration was actually Sam Elliott. So, it's a pretty amazing album. And the song Shallow, if you haven't heard it, you should listen to it. It's really good.
And is that Lady Gaga singing that?
With Bradley Cooper.
With Bradley Cooper. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm going to be talking podcasts the whole time. That shouldn't be a shock to anybody. The first one I discovered this year, it's been out for a little longer than a year, but it's called Tales from the Pits. And it is a barbecue show out of Texas. And it's two guys that run a barbecue catering company. And they literally travel all over the state and they interview the top pit masters. They go to the places that Texas Monthly, which is a magazine that does a top 50 barbecue restaurants every other year, maybe every year. Somebody in Texas, if I'm wrong, I apologize. They do that. They go to the top 50 restaurants. They try all the different things. They talk about what they eat. They just they'll sit in the car and as they road trip and they'll hit 4 or 5 restaurants in a day. They just record. So it's stream of consciousness, talking about food, talking about equipment. So if you're interested in smokers and off barrels and all this kind of kooky stuff like I am, because I like food and those of you who know me know that. Tales from the Pits, you cannot get much better when it comes to something so specific like Texas barbecue. All right, nice. Michael, you're up.
All right. So staying on the podcast theme, because I'm also heavily listening on the podcast rotation, I actually just discovered a new one recently. It's called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. And
yes.
I've heard of this. Yes.
And he's, there's tons of, obviously, someone interviews someone podcasts out there, but he sits down and basically the premise, quote unquote, is he's had all these guests on his show. And, but he wants to know can we actually be friends? Let's talk about about stuff and see if we actually could be friends in real life. And of course, it's all, a lot of it's tongue in cheek. Like he had Will Ferrell on for his first one, which was hilarious. The two of them, like, it wasn't like they both just talked as somewhat normal, but like, I mean, Will Ferrell's hilarious to begin with, and then you throw the two of them together is great. And he had Kristen Bell on secondly, and so there's only like 3 or 4 episodes out only, so it just started, but it is funny. He's I don't always since we cut the cord, I don't really watch Conan anymore on his show, but I always enjoyed him, when he was on, when I did see him on TV. So this was just fun. It's fun to listen to. So, yeah.
It's a great show, and it's interesting to hear him not have a television, not to be bound to a television.
Yes. Yeah.
Timing. I love the premise of it really is. I don't have any real friends. Could I be friends with some of these people?
Yep.
Great. Really. And he admits it, and he's like, I don't have any friends. Yeah, oh yeah, and he talks about he's distant, and it gets a bit philosophical. No, I'm Michael. I'm with you. It's a tremendous show. I was really excited when I heard it was coming, and then I think it launched about a month ago now, and it's great. It really is great.
Absolutely,
I'll check that out.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Chris. Next up.
I already mentioned this in the TV, but the soundtrack for Spider-Man PlayStation 4, the movie. So listening to this, I'm not kidding you guys. I want to throw on a Spider-Man costume and go fight crime. It is that good. I don't know if I have the physical dexterity to pull it off, but I would give it a good shot. It's just so a lot of the movies, the Danny Elfman one kind of stays with me. I don't know if you guys remember from the original, the Sam Raimi trilogy, and Danny Elfman did the music for the first 2, I think. But that theme, it was really, really good. And then they had the last 2 Spider-Man movies, the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And I think the track for the first one was pretty good. The second Amazing Spider-Man 2 was god awful. But this one, the soundtrack. So give you guys any time in the game that you swing through New York, the minute you just jump off a building and you're hitting the controller and you're spinning and swinging through New York, this track hits, and it's just this really, really glorious. Just like it just gets you pumped, and you're just swinging up and down and doing tricks. And it's just like, you know what? I think I could do this. I think I could go fight crime if I just put this, this track on my iPod or my iPhone and just go out there. And it's just super, super good. So shout out to I don't know who the composer was, but they did a good job with the soundtrack for that game.
Awesome.
Chris, when you start the Spider-Man podcast you're going to do, I want to be your first guest.
Seriously, I'm like,
Michael and Lorena are coming on with me.
The Sony PlayStations that are going to be bought because of this this podcast is amazing. So.
John, when I have my own PlayStation podcast, I want you to be my co-host, sir. Let's do it.
Oh,
someday.
Boy. Oh, boy. All right, Lorena, you said you just talked one album. What's up next?
I really am obsessed right now with Armchair Expert with Dax Shepard. That's a podcast. He basically interviews people in the entertainment industry, talks about, life experiences, a little bit about their current and previous projects, but it's kind of like a relaxed conversation. He does talk about his journey as a recovering drug addict and whatnot, so that's pretty interesting too. And then I think it's once a month. I might be wrong about that. He has like a special episode called Experts on Experts. And he basically, interviews people who are like book authors, doctors, very knowledgeable people about their lives. So he interviewed Brene Brown recently, which I was really excited about because she's going to actually be a keynote speaker in term 19. So, it's a really good podcast. You're going to laugh a lot, but at the same time, you learn a lot from it.
Well, I listened to the one you told me to listen to. I've listened to a couple. I think you said, I did. He's a great interviewer.
Did you like it?
No, he is though. Surprisingly, he is a great. He does a really. He's very laid back, and he interviews really well. So no, I'm with you there.
Awesome.
Well, my second show I discovered this year, and it came out last year as well. It's called Cocaine and Rhinestones, and it's right. So now it's an almost academic review of country western music in the 20th century.
Oh wow!
And the guy who does it, his name is Tyler Coe, and for some of you listening that may recognize the last name Coe, he's David Allan Coe's son.
I was going to ask if there was a relation.
Yeah. So when Tyler Mahan Coe, when Tyler Mahan Coe was 15, his dad took him out of school and made him his guitar player in his band.
Wow.
So he toured with his dad for almost 15 years, something like that, like almost till he was 30. And several years ago, they had a falling out on tour, and they have not spoken since.
Wow.
Oh.
And so he did this show. So here's this guy who I think he now has some type of GED or something, but barely got out of high school, who researches the history of country music and has put out these, I think the first season is 8 episodes, some of the most researched stuff I've ever heard. To me, it's fascinating as a fan of music in general, and especially to listen to this guy who lived it. And the reason he's telling some of the stories he's telling is he's heard these stories on the road. He's heard them from his dad. He's heard them from other musicians. He's in the Nashville area. It is a fascinating show. Again, especially if you're into country music, the Buck Owens, there's 2 Buck Owens episodes, just mind blowing in terms of the quality and the research. And that he and at the end of each show, he does footnotes and he explains what he read, who he talked to, all these things. So it's a deep dive. If you enjoy thought out, well researched stuff, and if you have any interest in country music, Cocaine and Rhinestones. On the flip side, he has another show that he does when he's drunk and stoned, apparently with a friend of his, and it's called Your Favorite Band Sucks.
There you go.
And every episode, all they do is bag on, and like this ought to give you a perspective. The first episode was called The Beatles Suck. And they have, you name the band, they've done these shows. So he goes from this like hour 20 minute long thought out production to here's a 30-minute show about why your favorite band sucks, and if you listen to them, you suck. So it's really funny. Start with Cocaine and Rhinestones, and then check out your favorite band.
That's awesome.
Kind of a double shot there, but great stuff.
Awesome. I'll have to check that one out.
How about you, Michael?
All right. Going to also kind of another podcast. How did this get made? I don't know if any of you have listened to this. This is Paul Scheer, his wife, and they also, and another, they usually have guests. They do a lot of live shows that they'll record, and they basically pick bad movies, although, it's all subjective. A lot of them tend to be in the 80s and 90s that, I would argue might be okay. Might be pretty decent, and then they basically, rag on it and critique it and have a lot of fun with it. Especially when they have my favorite part is after they kind of dig on it, they then read some of the 5-star reviews that are on Amazon for it. And it's just hilarious. Usually like how people like talk about how much they love the film that generally speaking, you would be like, that maybe a 3-star if you're lucky, whatever. So it's hilarious. They do a great job. It's, they just did usually they do some older stuff. They just actually did a recent one with, I think it was with Conan O'Brien, although it might have been with someone else, on The Rock's Skyscraper, the movie The Skyscraper that just came out with The Rock on it, and how just like crazy that was and whatever. And they even critiqued it to like Die Hard and how like Die Hard's good compared to that, that sort of thing and stuff like that. So it was actually pretty fun. So it's a fun laugh. I enjoy it. So, absolutely.
Excellent.
That sounds good.
All right, Chris, your last choice in the audio category.
Yeah, John, I'm going to cheat a little bit and save my last choice for audio when I talk about my top event item category. It directly ties in with that.
You're a rule breaker, man. You just love breaking the rules.
I'm a renegade, brother.
You're
setting up this, that. I'm taking notes.
You're setting up this event like it's a big event because everything's tying into it.
Well, I don't want to get everybody's hopes up that it's this really big thing. Like, gosh, what's Chris going to talk about? And when I talk about like, gosh, that was it. But it directly ties in the music from the game is something I've been listening to religiously. And so it directly ties in with my top event item. So that's kind of why I'm going to hesitate and wait to talk about it till we get to the next category.
Okay. All right. How about you, Lorena, then? What's your last choice here?
House of Works has a bunch of podcasts, but right now I'm really into one called Committed. It's with Yo Piazza, who's an author. She's nonfiction and fiction author. And basically what she does with Committed is she is traveling around, I think it's around the world, visiting people who have relationships that are very unconventional. Like, you hear about someone who, they were running the Boston Marathon together, and when the bomb happened, and how their lives changed completely, and how their relationship went from, being newlyweds 7 months into a marriage, and how their lives changed is like a whole 180 on them. And they also interview someone who was in the KKK and fell in love with an African American woman. And it's just these really random love stories and how they worked out or didn't work out at the end. So,
wow. Yeah, I've listened to that. I've listened to those too. It's good. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes,
yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I highly recommend that one.
Okay.
Definitely check that out. Well, my last one, it doesn't compare to Committed. It mixes comedy and music, and it's called Are You Talking REM Re Me? And it's hosted by Scott Aukerman from Comedy Bang Bang and Adam Scott, who was on Parks and Rec and Step Brothers, a lot of other things. But they did a show before called Are You Talking U2 to Me? And in that show, over a 4-year period, they went from talking about the band's discography to eventually meeting Bono and the guys in the band and becoming, I don't want to say friends, but friendly with them and getting backstage passes and all kinds of craziness. So when they were done with U2's album history, they went to REM. Now, I'm not a fan of either one of those bands necessarily. They're fine, but they're just not my thing. But these guys break it down. They're funny. And each episode, they break down that album. They talk about the production. They talk about the songs they like. It's a tremendous show. There are a lot of running gags in it. One of the funniest things is there's a comedian by the name of Todd Glass who really doesn't know anything about music. They bring him on and they talk about the band Stained, and they call it Stained Glass.
Oh.
It is, and it's all for fun. They're not fans of the band. They just make fun of Stained, but they call it Stained Glass. And it is one of the funniest things. If you're into that type of comedy, and especially if you know who these people are, it's absolutely hysterical. So again, Are You Talking REM Re Me? If you're into alternative comedy, if you like, especially if you've listened to Comedy Bang Bang and some of those shows and you haven't listened to it, even if you're not a fan of that band or the U2 show, just worth checking out because they have a really, really good time, and it's apparent. I just huge fan of those shows. Michael, nice. And so you're wrapping up the audio section here.
All right, so just to kind of close out, I guess, with just since we're on the podcast kick. So for me, I'm a big, relatively large history nerd too. So one of the things that I've listened to are some history podcasts. One that I really like, it's called Revolutions. Mike Duncan is the person who does it, and it's usually relatively short. Each episode's about 35, 40 minutes, but he goes through major revolutions that happened throughout the world. So he started with like the English Revolution, went through the French Revolution. He's actually now in the Mexican Revolution. He also did some in South America as well, and he's kind of bouncing around. His other claim to fame in history podcast lore, I guess, as they are, is he did a huge one, the history of Rome, where he started from the very beginning and worked all the way through to the fall of the Western Empire. And so that was, a multi-year project, and he's been on this one for a couple of years as well. And it's kind of fun. He has a good, it's high level, so, it's not digging deep, but at the same time, he also has a good quips and sense of humor in there too, as well. So it's definitely worth checking out if you're into that sort of thing. So.
Excellent.
Nice.
I know I've picked up some good stuff here, especially with these podcasts. So the last thing we're going to talk about, and we all get one thing here. So Chris has saved his up, and he's going to have to wait a little bit longer to talk about it. But we're going to talk about a pop culture or event.
Again, don't get your hopes up, guys.
Yeah. Well, so I get to kick this one off, and I've told this story on another show. I felt like it bore repeating because this has been a really fun year for me, putting out the social hour and meeting a lot of people along the way. And I happen to be at Baltimore Comic-Con, which I go to every year. And I have a lot of friends in my comic book nerd world that we all hang out together there. Usually, between 10 and 15 of us, that it's the one time a year we get to get together. They come from as far north as New York and Boston and that way, all the way out west, people as far as like Denver, and they all fly, everybody flies in and gets together at Baltimore. Had a great year, got some new G.I. Joe artwork, which is my other thing that I do. And Sunday, the last day of the show, I was walking around and I ran into a guy I know that owns a comic book shop or manages a comic book shop down in North Carolina. And we're talking. And all of a sudden, this lady runs up to me and says, I know you. You're famous. And I got all excited because I thought it was somebody that listened to HR Social Hour. And I looked at her and I said, okay. And she goes, you're a writer. You're famous. And I go, no, I'm not. She goes, yeah. Somebody told me about you and you're a writer and you're famous. And I said, no, I'm just some schmuck that goes to comic book shows. I got a podcast. Do you listen to that? And she didn't. But I had this really charming conversation with this lady who teaches art, and she teaches sequential art and things to like trade art to high school students. And she was there with some of her students and they were showcasing some of their artwork. And we talked about comics for a few minutes, and we talked about what I did. And I explained to her, no, I'm in human resources as a profession. I do a podcast. I do a fun podcast about 80s properties, but I'm definitely not a writer. And she was kind of sad that I was apparently not the person she thought I was, but she said, you're really, really nice. So I'm glad I stopped you. Well, I took a picture with her because I was like, I got to take this picture because all my friends are standing around howling. They're just howling. They think it's the funniest thing they've ever seen. My friend that runs the comic book shop in North Carolina, she walked away and he's like, did that just happen? And I'm like, yeah, man, it just happened. So my pop culture event was that I was famous for nothing.
Did she say who she thought that you were?
She did, and I can't remember the guy's name, but I looked him up, and we're probably 10 to 15 years different in age. And I don't. But what was funny was the day before.
Or older than him? That's the
no, I'm older. I have a pretty good feeling I'm older. But the funny part was the day before I was walking with a friend of mine, and another guy comes running up behind me and kept saying this name. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. I should have looked it up before I got on here. But he kept saying, hey, Jimmy, let's say, Jimmy. And he got like right up on me, Jimmy. And I turned around. Oh, you're not Jimmy? I'm like, no, man, I've never been Jimmy. It was the same person. But yeah, like I said, apparently.
Sorry to disappoint.
Yeah, but it was, it was my pop culture bubble was shattered because, again, I thought it was going to be a podcast fan. I always carry a few pins. So I was like, oh my gosh, I may give a pin at a comic book show and that would be bananas because but sadly, it was not. So that's my thing. Michael, what about your thing this year?
For this year, I'll get a little sappy, I guess. For me, it was just actually going to Sherm 18 and meeting, all of you guys in person and who've been interacting with and talking to, et cetera, and just being able to be there and experience that. So, yeah, I mean, for me, looking back at the year, that's definitely the high watermark of my year. So, absolutely. It was great.
Time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was a fun time.
Not as good as being mistaken for someone else, but it was still good. It was still good. So.
It's a close second.
It could happen there too.
Could have been. Yeah.
Well, Chris, your spotlight is on, my friend. Is this thing on?
Drum roll.
Oh man,
drum roll.
The pressures. Hey, before I get to, I want to that Sherm 18 was incredible, and I met John there. I don't remember what mixer it was, John. We were at they had like ping pong tables, I think, and I don't remember where exactly it was, but that's where I think I met John, and we just talked a lot about nerd culture and all sorts of stuff. So that was one of the highlights of my trip there was meeting John and talking about all good things geeky. But my event of I'm almost hesitant to say it just because everyone's like, this better be good, Chris, was Mega Man 11. It's a video game. Now, I had mentioned on the Social Hour podcast, I think when they asked what my favorite music was, I said the soundtracks to the original 8-bit Mega Man games. And I know Wendy got a kick out of that. And I said, go on YouTube and you can find them and they're really good and you can find remixes and there's all sorts of stuff. But if you follow me on Twitter, Instagram, you guys can tell in Facebook, I'm a huge Mega Man just fanboy from the original classic series. I'm talking about the one that started back in like 87, 86, the original games on the original NES. And they had a couple more after that that were considered next gen at the time. So they had Mega Man 7 that was on the Super NES back in the early 90s, I think. And then they had Mega Man 8 on the original PlayStation and Sega Saturn back in like 96, 97, I think. And so they were next gen at the time because the first 6 were on the original NES and all shared the same type of graphics, those old 8-bit graphics and the music and all that, and those were next gen, but they didn't play the same way. The mechanics were off. They just didn't feel like Mega Man, but they looked good for their time. And so in I think like 2008, 2010, Capcom, the developer, the publisher, had released Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10, and they went back to this 8-bit look. And so they were just complete retro revival games and played it like the original ones, and they were really good. I don't know if the last one, Mega Man 10, sold really well, and that was in 2010 because we have not had another Mega Man game since then. And so this series has been so near and dear to my heart. It's my favorite series of all time. A lot of Mega Man games got canceled, I think, or a couple of them got canceled in between then, and Mega Man's just kind of fallen off the radar. I think last year it was the 30th anniversary, I think, or was it earlier this year? I can't really remember, but they were doing a celebration of the 30th anniversary of Mega Man. And I think at the end of one of the commercials, all of a sudden it was a complete surprise. They had unveiled that Mega Man 11 was coming out, and it was completely next gen. It's on Nintendo Switch. It's on PlayStation and Xbox. And it looked gorgeous when I saw the YouTube commercial or the YouTube videos for it. But my concern was, is this going to play like the originals, or is it going to be like those other ones that, yeah, it looks good, but it just doesn't play that well. It's just a dream to play. And I just couldn't stop gushing about it. I said this, I think on Facebook, I said this game is just pure heaven. So I bought it for the Nintendo Switch, and I was super happy as a Mega Man fan that finally, after 8 years, because this was a game that I didn't think would ever exist. I thought Capcom just completely just said, this isn't really profitable for us anymore. They did it. I don't know how well it sold. I hope it sold well, because I hope we can get more. And I certainly don't want to wait 8 years, because I don't know how many more years I have of good gaming left in me. I can find my reflexes aren't what they were. I'm like dying in spots that I would never have died in before. It's like, well, this isn't the way that I remember playing it, but it was just an absolute dream to play. So going back to when I was on the social hour and I said the Mega Man music was some of my favorite, this one, the music is just gold. And so in my office, if people have been coming in there, they are welcomed by the Mega Man 11 soundtrack more likely than not, mixed in with some Christmas tunes now. So that was my top event item for 2018 was Mega Man 11. So Capcom, if you're listening, thank you for giving it to us.
Whew. Man, that is a lot. That was definitely a childhood dream coming true. It sounds like that's awesome.
When you start your Mega Man podcast, you can ask me to be on it, Chris, but I won't have much to say.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong.
If I could, I would want a Mega Man pod. I could just talk about. I mean, I knew that I was probably going to ramble on. Well, that's why I said, I'll cut my time from the third audio thing and dedicate it towards this one, because I knew it. But it just meant so much that they took a chance and said, we're going to go ahead and do another one. And when you play it, you can just see that they put a lot of love and care into it. There are a lot of the details in there. So that's it. Thank you. Yeah, that's it. Top event item of 2018.
Wow.
Very cool. Lorena, I don't know how you're going to top that, but
I'm not even going to try. I'm just going to say what I originally had planned and hope it sticks. So my thing was, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan, so I've read every single book, seen every single movie. I'm like obsessed. So the Fantastic Beasts, the second movie came out, The Crimes of Grindelwald, and that was my,
that looks really good.
It was it was a really good movie. I did not want to include it into the movie section because for me, Harry Potter is an event, no matter what you say. So
like Mega Man, of course, it's an event.
Exactly. So I was really excited about that, as well as they always, J.K. Rowling always also publishes the screenplay, which is a good thing for me because one thing that's like a pet peeve of mine going to the movie theater here in the US versus going to the movie theater in Puerto Rico is that even though I'm watching the movie in English, I always have subtitles in Puerto Rico. And then here they don't put subtitles, and that British accent always throws me off. So I was really excited about buying the actual book with the screenplay because there were certain jokes I missed and whatnot. So reading that was also very exciting.
Very cool.
Wow.
Very cool. Love it.
I'm not a Harry Potter fan, but I don't know if you guys have been to either Universal Studios in Florida or the one in Hollywood, but I went to the one in Hollywood. And I've not seen any of the movies. I admit I've not read any of the books, but I went to, I think, last year, and they have the new Harry Potter land there, and it was just phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
As somebody that's not that's a non-fan, the ride that they like, the Forbidden Journey or something like
Yes.
that, is probably one of, if not the best theme park rides I have ever experienced in my life. But just the whole feeling of it, and they had the train there and the music, and it's really super cool.
Well, yeah. I mean, the first 2 years I was here in Orlando, I had the annual pass for Universal, and I would just go because they would have Harry Potter events, and sometimes they would bring out some of the actors and whatnot. So I was like, I was all over the place with the whole Harry Potter thing when I first moved here in Orlando. So yes,
awesome.
Yeah, ever since I was 9 when the first book came out, yeah, I've been obsessed.
Good. That's cool.
Well, we've had a tremendous conversation about 2018, and again, I know I've picked up some things, and I'm hoping listeners have too. We're going to ask one more question, and you may have to think about it a bit, because I had to think about it a bit. What's the one thing that you're most excited about pop culture wise for 2019? And we're going to go in order of appearance on the show originally. So, Michael.
I went to school at the University of South Carolina in the mid '90s, which meant that Hootie and the Blowfish was a huge thing back then. It was they had just literally they all graduated and or left school the year before I started, so I was right on the cusp of them hitting it big. And so they are doing a reunion tour next year, and I jumped, and they're coming to Indianapolis, so I jumped on and got tickets, and so they are coming in August. So I'm looking forward to that. And Ben Folds is actually opening for them, or maybe they're sharing this stage.
Wow.
I don't know how this goes. And so I will be doing dual duty there. I actually have to bone up on my Ben Folds, John. You're gonna have to help me.
All right, we'll talk.
I am not. It's been a while since I've listened to him, but no, I'm super excited. In fact, actually, it was funny. I messaged my wife. I'm like, I'm getting these tickets. Like they're coming. They're coming in. I'm getting these tickets, and she didn't respond. And then like I sent her later. I'm like, I got them. Merry Christmas or whatever. And when I got home, she's like, I really didn't think you were serious, but okay, sounds good. So she's like, I'll be excited. It'll be fun. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll have a good time. So I'm looking forward to it. So super excited.
That's awesome.
Awesome. All right, Chris.
So unless Capcom somehow surprises us with a Mega Man 12, which has not been announced, my top pop culture event is the opening of Star Wars Land, Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland.
Oh, okay.
That's gotta be amazing.
So
wow.
I don't know for sure the date. I think the last update I saw that was like opening like summer 2019, but I know those are subject to change based on construction and all that. My family and I were planning a trip to Disneyland for my son's birthday around April. I hope it's open, because if it's not, we're just going to go back when it opens up.
Love it.
But I just can't. Well, like I was mentioning, and I'm a big theme park nut. I just love, and Disneyland's my jam. But being not being a Harry Potter fan and just feeling this, real excitement of being there, and I wasn't even a fan. I just don't even know what I'm going to do when I walk into Star Wars Land. Just being a I'm just going to collapse in tears and joy. I mean, I don't know what I'm going to do, and I know the crowds are going to be nuts, and I know all that stuff, but I just cannot wait to just walk in there and experience what Disney. I think there's one opening in at Disney World too, if I'm not mistaken. So I think they're going to have both on both coasts. Yeah, okay. But so that is my. Yeah.
That does sound incredible. Wow.
Star Wars Land. Galaxy's Edge 2019.
I'd probably be right with you on the floor too, so it's all good.
Hey, Lorena, how about you?
So for me, this was the hardest one to think about. I even went into like my social media accounts to see if something triggered something else, because I am always the type of person who like finds out about things very last minute. Like I'm not a huge, like even though I'm a huge fan of many things, except for Harry Potter, I'm not usually in the loop until it's already happened. So while I was on Instagram, one of my favorite singers, Ellie Goulding, she made an announcement today that she's actually going to be doing her 4th studio album, and that made me really excited because the last album she put out was back in 2015. So that's what I'm looking forward to now in 2019, her studio album, because after that, they'll probably have a tour and her concerts are amazing. So it'll be a huge thing for me.
Cool.
Nice.
Very cool.
Well, I don't look anymore at what's coming up, but I will say I do know that 2019 we're going to get Avengers Endgame because we just got the trailer. I think that's in April. So I guess for now, at least, that's probably the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to, only because I am curious, just like everyone else, how they're going to fix the snap. But yeah, I think it'll make a lot of money, and there will be people that are happy and there'll be people that are sad, and that's the beauty of this thing. That's the beauty of pop culture. So, well, I want to thank all of you again for taking part in this. This was super fun. I didn't know where we were going to go. It's been a blast, and I appreciate you taking part. Real quickly, Michael, what's the best way for folks to reach you?
You can find me on Twitter. It's just MJ Mullady, and there's a link to my LinkedIn from there as well. So that'd be the best place to get me.
Great. Chris, how about you?
Twitter, Chris Orozco 72. That is the same over on the Instagram as well.
And Lorena.
So it's LPABONHR, and there you can see the link to my blog, well, Amanda and I's blog, and then my LinkedIn as well.
And as always, you'll find me at hrsocialpodcast.podbean.com. So again, thanks for listening to the Pop Culture Roundtable. Chris, Michael, Lorena, again, thanks for taking part. We'll do this again down the road, and hope everybody enjoyed. Take care and have a great 2019.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.